Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday. Um, you all know who I am, Dr. Maisha, the founder of the Mind ReMapping Academy. And I was, it's good to see you all here on live on Instagram, and then I'm here live on LinkedIn as well as on YouTube. So today, So over the last few weeks, we've been talking about thought habits and creating new thought habits. And we talked about sort of an overview of different techniques that you could use to do that. We talked about reframing. I think it was last week we talked about reframing, or maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. I've been in training. I just finished my 7-day NLP training. Oh yeah, so it's been a couple of weeks since we last were live here, and it was amazing. We had some amazing results and breakthroughs and transformations in the training as per usual. Nothing new, nothing different. But we've been talking about these thought habits, and it's interesting because I was by now, many of you know the work that I do in training and neurolinguistic programming, and personal coaching and personal breakthrough sessions that I do. But I also do the work inside of diversity, equity, inclusion, particularly more in the anti-racism space and the unconscious bias space. And so today I was having a conversation with a potential organizational client, and she was asking me, we were talking about the utility of this unconscious mind work in the organizational space as it pertains to bias and race conversations. And what I was sharing with her was that bias, our biases, are essentially thought habits. They are thought habits, and there I broke down for her the nature of how bias occurs, at the brain level, at the neurological level. Now, I won't do that here. That's something that I'm going to do in my TEDx talk. You all know that I have a TEDx talk. I've announced it multiple times, and so that's something that I do in the TEDx talk. I break down the nature of how our thoughts, our perceptions get created, through how our filters get created. And this is sort of the brain, the neurological basis behind bias. So I was just breaking that down to her. But these are thought habits. Our biases are thought habits that occur at the unconscious level. So if you're doing work, the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, of anti-racism, foundational work to begin to do is to examine one's thought habits, because we can put together frameworks, and I think frameworks and the structure and policy is very important. And if people, and this is what I was explaining to my leader, is that if the people who are executing the work are not fully understanding or bought into why they're doing the work, then it makes it less effective, as opposed to when they can be doing the work themselves and infusing that into the organizational day-to-day things that they do. So that segues me into thought habits and how we begin to re-examine those thought habits. I just gave you the why, and there are lots of whys that you might re-examine your thought habits. You can think on a personal level, like what are some of the thought habits that you have that are impeding your process, that are impeding your progress, shall I say? What are some of the thought habits that you have that disempower you, that keep you sad, that keep you angry, that keep you feeling guilty? I had a conversation with a client of mine, and one of the things that we were working on was getting rid of her guilt, getting her to the point where she was willing to do self care. And one of the things that we kept bumping up against was this inappropriate guilt. And I had to ask, what is it that you're getting out of holding on to this negative emotion? And so, as we began to re-examine that, um, she came up with a few things for her personally that she realized that were having her actually hold on, not be willing to let go of this guilt. Now you could substitute any emotion that you want for this, but the bottom line is we have to begin to re-examine these thought habits and start to ask ourselves some basic questions. And one of the biggest questions I ask, and especially when there's resistance to letting go of a particular way of thinking or being, is what is the secondary gain? What is the secondary gain? And sometimes this can be a very difficult question to ask oneself, because theoretically speaking, if you have a negative thought process that you're trying to get rid of, a resistance, um, a negative emotion that you're trying to get rid of, you at the first conscious level, you're not thinking, oh, I'm benefiting from this, I'm benefiting from this negative emotion or this negative thought in some kind of way. But when there is persistent resistance to changing the thought process, then we have to begin to look at, re-examine, what is the benefit that we're getting from this, what is the gain. And then we have to begin to look at, well, what does it get you? Does it, or what does it get you out of? All right. Does it get you out of being responsible for a particular change? Does it get you out of being responsible for speaking up? Does it get you attention? Does it get you sympathy? Does it get you power? Right? Depending on what the belief or the thought is. So that's one of the questions that I begin to ask whenever there's a resistance to letting go. Now, by and large, um, for most people, there's not so much of resistance of letting go of a thought habit. But if you find yourself in resistance for letting go of a particular thought habit, then you might begin to ask yourself, what am I getting from it? What am I gaining from holding on to this thing that is supposedly causing me anguish or suffering or discomfort? Okay, so that's one of the things that I want to share. But there are some other things that we can ask ourselves, like when we have these negative thought patterns. Let's take an example. Um, let's take I'm not good enough as an example. Good enough is a probably one of the most common examples, that I'm not good enough to do this, or I can't. We can take the example of I can't. So if in the example of I can't or I am not able to do a thing, you can look at, let's say I'm not able I don't know anything about business. I can't run a business. Um, and then you want to start to break that down. Well, what are the components that you feel that you aren't unable to do? So that's the first question. Like, this is really big chunk. I can't run a business, or I can't do a particular thing. What are the components of that thing specifically can't you do? What specifically about that can't you do? Or I'm not good at something. What about that thing specifically are you not good at? Because then we begin to unearth the structure, the deeper structure of the belief of what it is that you believe you're not good at. So if someone says, well, I'm not good at speaking in public, well, what specifically about speaking in public are you not good at? And then the person might say, well, when I get on stage, I forget what I'm going to say, or when I get on stage, I freeze, or my heart starts to pound when I think about speaking. And I'm specifically talking about speaking. It's what came up for me as well. That's what I'm about to do, and I'm not particularly afraid of public speaking. However, it's as I've been in conversation about doing this TEDx talk, I've got a number of feedback about people's feelings about speaking in front of people. So you can map on anything you want to this speaking, or I'm not good at relationships. I always pick out the wrong partner. I'm not good at running a business. Whatever that belief is that you have, that habitual belief that you have, you can pick whatever it is and take you to this exercise. So what specifically about the thing do you feel you don't have enough of, or you're not good at, or you can't do? When you chunk that down, then you might take, let's say, I forget what I'm going to say. So I'm not good at speaking. I forget what I'm going to say. So then you could then ask yourself, is there ever a time where I've had to say something where I have not forgotten what I was going to say? So is there ever a time when you have not done the thing that you could not do? I know that's a double negative. It's on purpose, right? Is there ever a time where that thing that you say you cannot do isn't true? Was there ever a time when that isn't true? And so then you have to think about it, whether it's on a larger scale or a different context or um, a completely different, well, different context, really. Whether it's on a smaller scale, whether it's for a different circumstance or situation, is there ever a time when that statement was not true, especially after you chunk it down to what the actual problem is? And then so you might say, well, yeah, there are plenty of times where I had to say something that I didn't forget what I had to say. And then, of course, there's always the but I wasn't speaking in front of people. Well, is there ever a time when you were speaking in front of a person or more than one person where you didn't forget what you were going to say? Oh, yes, we were out at a restaurant and we were at a table and there were six people around. So you get that what I'm saying here is that you can disprove your theory of what you can't do by finding another circumstance where you were able to do it. Then the question becomes, what was happening? What was the circumstance or the feeling that you had when when you could do the thing that you thought you couldn't do? All right. Hang in there with me because I know this is this is actually brain work. So the first question is there what is it specifically that you think you can't do? What is about that thing specifically can't you do? Break down the components. The second thing is, was there ever a time after you break it down into the components where you could do the thing that you're saying that you cannot do or that you weren't good at? All right. It might even be, oh, yeah, when I was a kid, I used to be able to do that. Well, what was going on when you were able to do it? What were you experiencing? What were you feeling? Now, that may be confidence, that may be powerful, that may be I felt motivated, whatever that feeling, what was the positive feeling that you felt that had you be able to do the thing that you said you could not do, or the thing that you said you were not good at? I can't run a business. Was there ever a time? What about that? Well, I can't sell. Was there ever a time in your life where where you actually sold something? Oh yeah, I sold Girl Scout cookies when I was a kid, or I had a lemonade stand, right? Well, what was happening? What made you able to sell the lemonade that th- that that you're missing now? What is the resource? So what we're recovering is the resource that was there that you feel that you have disconnected from, not lost, not that's not there, but you've disconnected from. Okay, so we're talking about thought habits. We're talking about the process of of dismantling a thought habit by asking yourself a few questions. All right. So when has that not been true? Now, if there's never been a time when that thing has ever been true that you said that you could not do, or that you could not have, or that you could not be, if that's actually never been true, the next question to ask is, who do you know that has that skill? Who do you know that has that skill? Could you learn that skill? Could you learn that skill from them or from someone else? Because most of the time we stop at I can't, or I'm not good at, or I've never been able to, or I've never been, or I'm not enough of. So once we've determined, where we are in terms of having had the capacity in the past to do the thing that say we don't have the capacity for. We're talking about negative thought habits, negative thought patterns, and particularly about oneself. Once we recover the capacity, then and if the capacity still feels like it's not enough or feels like so far gone that we need to now recover new resources, do you know someone who can, or can you learn that? Now, most people will say yes, they could learn that. I could learn how to do that. There might be some objection behind that. I could learn that, but then you again, that's the next thought habit. Anytime a but comes into play, there's another limiting belief or thought habit that's in play. And then you do the same process, right? Because what we're doing is we're dismantling these beliefs that you've accepted, these decisions, these beliefs that you've made a decision about, that you've accepted about yourself. Now, let's back up because this actually can be used with other people. You could do the same thing with other people. A belief that you have about another person. Say this person has never liked me. This person has always been against me, or has always had some type of feeling towards me. Has that always been true? How do you know? How do you know that this person doesn't like you? Right? Or how do you know this person feels a particular way about you? That's the question to ask. When, and then have you, and of course, if you've had a particular interaction with them, how do you know that still exists? What would be the circumstance in which they would not feel that way about you? So you can see you have to be, all I'm doing is I'm asking questions to re examine how true how true is true? How true of a statement is your truth, right? Because we take these things as our truths, but how true are they actually? And I can ask any number of questions. And actually, there's a really good book. It's a children's book. It's a book that I read to my son called The Four Questions. And it's written, one of the authors is Byron Katie, and it's about Henny Penny. And I don't know if anyone remembers the story of Henny Penny. The sky is falling, but she rewrites the story. They rewrite the story to ask these questions, these four questions. How do you know? Is it really true? How can you be sure? How can you be sure that it's actually true? What if it wasn't true? What if it was true? How do you feel? So there are a couple of the questions that are asked in that book. You should go check it out. Whether you're a kid or an adult doesn't really matter, but it's those four questions are actually pretty useful in the context of adults and dealing with our thoughts, our thought habits, and our limiting beliefs. So now, um, when you have gotten to this place where you have said, um, "Can I learn this thing?" and the answer is yes, you've essentially dismantled the thought habit of I can't, or I am unable, or I have always been. Because when you realize that, speaking specifically of I can't, or I don't have enough of, or I'm not enough of, or I have always been unable to, right? Speaking of that, or I am even, we have to be careful with I ams. When you ask those questions and you realize there is another alternative that you are that capable of, it dismantles the ultimate truth of what you think you are or are not. Same thing pertains to other people as well. Now, oftentimes I see the resistance come with letting go of thought habits or judgments or preconceived notions about other people. What there is to do about that is to then turn the questioning again back to oneself. Now, when I say turn the questioning back to oneself, I'm not saying turning the blame. I'm saying investigate what's going on in here that has you hold on to that thought habit. All right, and in some cases, the what's true is true. So I won't invalidate that in some cases, uh, what is. If there's a beef, there's a beef. If there's a harm being done, there's harm being done. And we want to always be re-examining our own thought habits and perceptions and then looking at, well, how can we shift in a way that creates a new future, that creates a new future? Because in truth, there are an infinite amount of futures to be created. Sometimes I think we're stuck on there's only one future, there's only one destination, but there are multiple futures to be created, and every thought that we have, every word that we speak, every choice that we make could lead to a multiple amount of futures. It's the difference between when you're driving down the street and um, you're going to a destination. You now there are multiple ways to the same path, but then also if you're driving down the street and you have no destination, then every turn could take you to a different place. Every turn, one turn could take you to downtown, and the other turn could take you out of town. and and then the next turn could take you to Tennessee, and then another turn could take you uh, to Alabama. So there's an infinite number of futures, and we have to be responsible for that. We can be at the source of creating these futures. And that's the point of getting in front of our thought habits, is because these thoughts, these thoughts do become our words, which become our actions, which become our habits, which become our character, which become our destiny. So utilize this process of questioning your thought habits, your belief patterns, your beliefs about yourself, as well as your beliefs about others, and your beliefs about what's possible, your beliefs about a particular thing, process, organization, entity. Always question your thoughts about that to know whether it's possible to shift the future to what you desire it to be. Here's the thing, if you're moving into a future that you're of your desire, then I'd still think about what are expanded possibilities beyond that, because sometimes we're moving in a direction that's positive, a direction that's desired, and then we get settled in that. Like, oh, it's all good. I'm moving in the direction. And so the next level of that, for those of you who are like, well, I'm already moving in the direction of my desire, that's wonderful. But don't stop questioning just because you're moving in the direction of your desire. Keep questioning, keep expanding, keep elevating. Because for me, I mean, that's probably how I ended up shifting careers a few times, is because I was comfortable. I was doing the thing that I love to do, which is empower people. First and directly in healthcare and medicine, in their health and well-being and integrative medicine. Then, uh, healthcare professionals in recovering meaning to the work that they're doing in medicine and mitigating burnout. Then in career, like helping other medical professionals uh, move into careers that they love, even start businesses. And then to the next level for me was is organizationally in this area arena of equity and partnership and inclusion, diversity. And how do I bring my particular expertise of thought habits, and especially as it pertains to bias and equity, how do I bring this into organizations in a way that helps them to work together to execute the plans with efficiency, that they want to expand themselves and transform their organization. So that is the process for today. We will be continuing talking about beliefs. One more, I think we have one more talk on beliefs before I shift gears. Um, and I'm going to take you all through a different process next week in getting a quick way to begin to dismantle an old belief pattern that you want, and to insert a new belief pattern. So I'll take you through a little process, a little belief change process that I often do with my clients, and I'll do that next week. So until then, you all I would bookmark this, share it if you think it has usefulness, comment, let me know your thoughts, and rewatch this and take on one particular thought habit that you have, one particular, whether it's a limiting belief or a thought habit that you want to expand out upon or you want to get rid of, you want to start to dismantle. It's been sticky and you want to dismantle that, a thought about yourself, a thought about another person, and start to use this line of questioning. All right, just to recap it one more time. What's the belief? What specifically about the thing do you believe? So if I'm not uh, good at business, I'm not good at something, or this person always feels this way about me. So if we're going to use it for someone else, what specifically about X can you not do or are you not good at? Or what specifically about that person has you think that they feel this way about you? So you want to break it down, you want to chunk it down into what the real problem is. And you can keep asking what specifically until you get all of the problems, the really chunked down specific beliefs. So then you can ask yourself, when has that not been true? So is there a time where you where what you're saying the problem is has not been true about that person or about yourself? Is there a time when you were good at speaking in front of people, or where you spoke in front of people and you didn't get nervous, or whether you spoke in front of people and you didn't forget what you were going to say? Right? So, is there a time when that belief was not true or when that thing that you thought was not true? If there was never a time when that thing was not true, you can always ask, is there, this is about the belief of ability, is there someone else that you know that can? Is there someone else that you know that can? And can you learn that thing? Right? And that speaks to the belief of ability. And if you say yes, you can learn a thing, the next question is where? Where do you learn the thing? That uh, springs you into action. That springs you into action. If it's a belief about a person, is there ever a time when that person didn't act this way towards you or didn't feel that way towards you? And there's never a time. You could also ask the question of, is there a time when a person acted this way towards you and you know that they didn't dislike you? Okay, that's another line of questioning. So then how do you know that this is the case? So that is, and then what is the next step to take with the person themselves? If there's anything, sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's no next step to take. What will release you from feeling whatever you feel about this person feeling that way about you? If you're very sure and you're willing. Now, if you're unwilling to let go of the belief, remember, you might be holding on to some secondary gain. So if you come to a point where you're like, you're digging your heels in, you're saying, no, this is the truth, then you want to ask yourself, what am I gaining from holding on to this belief? What is it getting me? What is it getting me out of? And just examine it. And remember, these are all just places to stand, okay? Because there's, no one truth really. But where you choose to put yourself at the source um, gives you the power to create whatever future you want to create. And that's the bottom line. So that was the recap for those who came in a little bit late. And I hope that you found this useful and valuable. And so I will be um, coming in and doing, like I said, another belief change exercise next week. Thank you all for coming in. I see Dr. Penn. I think this is Dr. Penn. I'm looking from far away. Thank you for your comment. And I see some other comments from Instagram, so I'll make sure I come back and respond to that. I'm sitting a little far away from my cameras today. And so look forward to next time. You all have a wonderful rest of the week. Namaste.